Here we are once again with the Chef Knives to Go quick look product review. I'm Steve Gamache, and we've got the Yahiko VG-10 Damascus Yo or Western handled Gyuto 210mm knife. So the construction on this, so the hardcore cutting steel in the center is VG-10 full stainless steel. Heat treat's not specified on the site, at least at the time I was making these videos. So typically these are around 60 to 61 Rockwell rating. The construction is layers of a soft stainless cladding on either side of that hardcore steel. This has a tsushime or hammered finish on either side of the flats, and then you can see the layers peeking through as it's ground down towards the center of those layered cladding for the Damascus look. And there's your core steel peeking out at the edge there. So these knives have a lot of bling to them. They've got a lot going on, a pretty cool aesthetic. They do have hand chisel kanji, which is a nice authentic touch to it versus some of the etching that you see like made in Japan on there. So I think personally that's kind of a nice added touch to these in my personal opinion. Weight and dimensions should be pretty similar from knife to knife, but they can vary just a little bit. This particular one is 185 grams or 6.5 ounces. The edge length is 215 millimeters or 8.5 inches, so a little oversized. These are basically the same blades as the or Japanese handled versions of these. So the main difference is the weight and the ergonomics. So I believe I just did the 210s. I think that was 4.6 ounces. So there's quite a big difference in weight, and also the balance point is going to be a lot further back on these Western versions. So, or if you like that look or feel, or you want to blend in more in the kitchen, if you're in a pro environment, want to blend in more with a regular type Western handle, that might be a preference that you have. The edge length that we mentioned, the overall length is 13.2 inches all the way down, 335 millimeter. Spine thickness, these are going to vary just a little bit from knife to knife. The WA version of this 210 was about 2 millimeters, and it's a little hard to measure the width on these because of the hammer marks, but around that 2 millimeter mark. I got 1.9 on this, but they don't really have a lot of taper on them. It's just pretty much the same thickness all the way down until you hit the grind. And they get fairly thin at the very, very tip. So the tip should work well as long as you keep the knife sharp. There's your grind. They do grind down to a fairly thin edge as well. Out of the box sharpness, I'd say it was maybe 5 out of 10. They've got a fairly high grit edge on, I should say low grit coarse edge on there. Looks like the edge bevel was formed quite nicely, but it's definitely not a high grit edge, but it's fairly sharp out of the box. The blade is pretty stiff for its width. I'd say edge on this was probably more like 70-30 or really 30-70. So 30%, 70%, meaning the edge bevel width is about 70% versus 30% as far as, ratio. So there's not a whole lot of edge bevel on the left side of the blade. That might steer a little bit if you're a lefty. If it does, no biggie. You can sharpen more on the left side to kind of bring it back a little more to the center line for the actual cutting edge. If you want to do that, wouldn't be a big deal to do that. So let's see, balance point is about right there. So it's just in front of the choil or the back of the blade. Blade height is 45.9, or basically 46 millimeters, so not super wide on the neck. Basically very similar, as I said, to the WA version, but you've got that for your cutting board clearance, which should be plenty for most people. Handles, nothing fancy. It's a black pack of wood, which is stabilized wood product with a full tang, stainless rivets. Looks like a pinned bolster on here. But fit and finish is good. Everything's very smooth, nicely done. I guess let's get a close-up look. So you've got the tsushime or hammered finish on the sides. You've got the Damascus or layered look on the grind. And then you've got the edge steel peeking out there at the bottom. It does have hand chiseled kanji, which is, as I already mentioned, a nice touch. So this is the right side of the blade as you'd be using the knife. This is the left side of the blade. They've done a little bit of polish and just a little relief on the corners of the flat spine, so that's comfortable. They've done a little bit of work on the choil as well, so that is pretty comfortable as well. Let's look at it on the cutting board. So these have pretty good performers. They're not like lasers or anything. I get the distinct feeling that keeping these quite sharp will definitely assist with performance on these. Here's your profile. Again, very, very similar to the Wah version. It's basically the same blade in a different package. So fairly curvy. There's not a lot of flat on it. So just kind of a continuous belly all the way down, kind of a shallow belly. And then I can get in this area here as far as going up before I start digging the tip in. If you want to go higher, you could massage that last couple of millimeters or so of the tip during sharpening and kind of upsweep it a little if you wanted to. But pretty good versatile profile, not if you're a pure chopper, but for everything else it should work quite nicely. So there you have the Western version of this package. This is the Yahiko VG-10 Damascus Gyuto 210mm knife.